It's a new year and time for a new you. Maybe. Unless you like the old you or the current you. Wouldn't that be nice? But if you're going to go somewhere to change or improve yourself, you need to know where you are right now at the start. In this video, Vivian guides us through a practice orienting us to where we are right now so we can be here now and be prepared for creating what's next. And also a little bit of, it's nice to be me right now. Enjoy. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new year and a new class. Actually, it's the same class, but we've rebranded it. So now we're calling it, well, we're still trying to figure out if we're calling it Living Now or Living Here, Living Now, but it's the same material because it's good material. So, hi, I'm your host, Frank, and I'm here with Vivian. Hi, Vivian.
Hello, Frank. Hello, everyone.
And I'm sorry, as we were getting set up, we meant somebody arrived early, and meant to send them to the waiting room, and I think we sent them to the ether. So um, I'm looking to see if their name reappears on the list. And sorry. So to tell you a little bit about why it says "living now" with an NOW. Um, so there's this notion about now, right? So most people are familiar with be here now. What we like about now is it's both an acronym and a word. So now is literally now in this moment. And we also like it because it's no one way, because that part's really important to us. We feel like there are lots of ways to practice, lots of ways to live a life, lots of ways to be, and that whether it's right or not depends on the perspective, and the perspective we value the most is yours, right? The person whose life it is, who's living it. So there are lots of different ways to conceptualize that, lots of ways to judge it, and lots of benefits to different groups for their judgment. And we want to support you and your way of living your life and your way of practice. So, you're probably familiar with how often people will say, this is the best way, or this is the only way, trying to corner a market. And for us, there's no market to corner. Like the more the merrier, the more value there is. And we always encourage like experimenting. And then if you find things that are working for you, great, keep doing the things that work. And if you find things that aren't working for you, our invitation is always to consider a couple things. One is maybe practicing a little more, because sometimes new things, well, I always feel like new things always feel weird when you start. So it may feel weird, or it may not feel like you're getting what you wanted to get out of it. And sometimes it helps to keep practicing a little bit. I think to do that, you have to really trust the people who are delivering it to you. And some people I want to suggest don't trust. Uh, I think the name is influencers and motivational speakers. um, so so the invitation is, if it doesn't feel like it's working, it might help to keep playing around or experimenting with it for a little longer. And also sometimes it's not working because it's not working for you. I think about how often there are things that are like good ideas, but then you try to do them, and the doing of them is like great as an idea, but not as a living practice.
Mhm.
So that's a long story around how we changed the name from resilience practices, or what else did we call it? Mindfulness practices, to living now. Vivian, do you have anything to add to the description of our philosophy?
No, thank you for that.
Well, then, As always, you can chat with us, and people already are. You found your
Oh,
way to the chat, so feel free to chime in anytime, ask us questions, make comments. I'm really enjoying that people are hopping in and saying hello. And so tonight, Vivian will take us on a journey. So I'll hand it over to you, Vivian.
that I don't know about a journey, but what we thought what we would do, since it is the beginning of the year, and Happy New Year to you all, um, was that we start, like, basically bring it down to the basics and just start from there. And so the theme for the month of January is going to be New Year, New You. And by you, you could say it when you say it to yourself, because we were kind of also debating, we've been debating a lot on what to call everything. New Year, New You. But when you would say it to yourself, it would be like an affirmation of New Year, New Me. And for this week's topic, I thought we would start where we are, because we all have a sense of limitations, perceptions, biases, um, filter, just generally filters, without like it being negative or positive. This is how we move in the world, and preferences. So we have to take all of that in to consideration as we move to see what are we working with, what are the basic building blocks of this life, of this existence, of this practice. And just stepping back before I start introducing the practice we're going to do, I wanted to speak a little bit about what are the components of our reality. The first is that we're constantly receiving external and internal stimuli, right? External stimuli are the sounds and the actions that we see and feel, like what moves us, like whether it's the temperature, right? There's all these externalities that are triggering something in us as stimulation. And then there's the next level of it, of that extrapolating meaning or comparing it to past experience, um, that level of meaning and interpretation that we bring to the stimuli. And this is developed over time, right? The first time we touched a hot surface, we didn't realize the actual heat, but later on when we approached it again, all of a sudden the next time we realize, oh, what kind of heat can I handle, right? So you learn by repetition and you learn by experience, and you start connecting the two, the stimuli to the interpretation or meaning, so that you can react or respond skillfully. Um, and so realizing that there's very little we can control in our externalities, so much of our existence is reliant and dependent on things beyond our control. The meaning, the interpretation, and the relation, and how we relate to it, to these externalities, are within our control, things that we can adapt. Um, and um, how much emphasis and importance we give things. It's all about um, being able to navigate that piece, and that's where we can make the most difference in the way we approach our life. And if we are working on a new year, new me, this is where we can have the greatest impact on that, no matter what it is that we decide to do, whether it's, dietary changes or personal introspective changes, or meditation and mindfulness practice. So the technique that I want to share with you all today, we refer to it as see, hear, feel. It's kind of like the cornerstone of the unified mindfulness um, technique, which we've done before, but I think it's a really important set of techniques to share again, because it really helps break up the different pieces of the reality we're living. So, the reality that we live in comes through our senses, right? So it's see, hear, feel, slash, let's do feel slash taste, right? Um, that's where it comes from. Now, there's seeing, hearing, and feeling things that are happening internally. So whether it's you're daydreaming and you're running a movie through your head, maybe it even has dialogue, or you're having an interaction with someone out externally, that would be an outward focus of the see, hear, feel space. In But inwardly, you're managing this movie that has an internal dialogue. Maybe it's even bringing up emotions. That would be an inner feel, is how they define it. Whereas an outer feel is everything that's working on your senses externally that you're sensing, beyond seeing and hearing. So, with each of these, there's also a state of being, and it could be active. Um, and that is like it's actually triggered. You're seeing things, you're delineating, this is a window, this is a painting, right? You're noting what's in front of you, and when you're seeing outwardly. Um, and that's an active state. Or sometimes we can see when we're seeing, but it's not capturing any particular image. And a lot of times we can do that if we even just like cast our eyes half open, and everything kind of melds into each other. There's no direct focus on anything in particular. So that is what it would feel like if you were in a restful state of seeing outwardly, for example. So things, and we'll get into each one in a moment, but just to know that you have see, hear, feel, and each of those has a inward and outward focus, as well as an active and restful state. So looking at seeing, when we're seeing in, it's usually, I mean, we can do it with our eyes open, but before we close our eyes for a moment, you start noting what's going on in the mind and what's the activity happening. So there might be mental images and memories, planning, daydreaming, as I mentioned before. And the restful states of seeing in would be if when you close your eyes, it's kind of just a blank page, or you're seeing just shading of dark and light, maybe based on the light in the room, but you're not actually seeing anything in particular, or it's creating floaters, as they're known, in optometry, like when you see things moving. Um, but there isn't a particular image being created by the mind. Seeing outwardly, that's what we experience outward to the world if we have the sense of seeing. And when it's active, you're looking at the objects that are in front of you, you're looking at the colors and the densities and the shapes and the distance in your visual field. But when it's in a restful state, like I mentioned, there's like it's there, but there's no the mind isn't distinguishing it. It's seeing it all as like one just painting, one image, as opposed to a particular set of things to focus on. So similarly, when we talk about hearing and working with hear, Um, you have the in and out. Hearing in is what you hear in your mind, that self talk. Hopefully, it's growing kinder and kinder by the day. Um, any mental talk, that inner dialogue that's constantly going. And sometimes we don't even notice it. Sometimes, especially when we're having a conversation, we're reacting, we're having judgments, we're trying to solve or fix for this whatever's being shared with us. So there's an inner monologue happening in addition to us trying to pay attention to who's in front of us and what they're sharing. And so the active state when we're hearing in is words and sentences, even whispers. Um, you know, there would be times when I'd be practicing and uh, they wouldn't be I thought that I was in that rest state, that next level of quiet mental talk that would be quiet. But in fact, I would start hearing just little spurts of whispers about my practice or about what was going on or the next thing that I was going to pay attention to. So you can get really granular in noticing what you're hearing inwardly. But there's also that periods, maybe short lived, maybe it's a second, might not even be very long, a second or 2 seconds, where you might experience a rest in the internal dialogue that's constantly going. Alternatively, hearing outwards is all the things that come through your sense, your auditory sense gates. So the sounds in your environment, my voice right now, any sounds that you're hearing, like your stomach gurgling, or because you would think that that would be like a hearing in because it's happening in the body, or like burping or coughing. These would be things that are activating your auditory skills. So you would consider that active noticing as part of ambient sound that you're experiencing. And then rest would be under the here focus. Rest would feel like ambient silence, relative silence. When you note it, sometimes you can actually know, I'm not hearing anything. And then all of a sudden you might focus in, you'll be like, oh, wait, but there's a ticking clock, right? So, but when that period where you're noticing there's no, so it's all relative. When you're noticing there's no sound happening, um, you would call that rest. And then finally, when we look at the field of experience, here too, we'll refer to feeling inwards as anything that you note physically is happening due to an emotion. It's being triggered by an emotion. So emotions, the only way that they can communicate what's happening to us is through different physical sensations that the mind pulls together and says, oh, that's anger. Oh, that's frustration, right? So when it's active, um, you you begin to notice, okay, is this being triggered by an emotional state, or is this just a physical? Am I just, am I having to clear my throat because I'm upset or I'm frustrated or something, or am I clearing my throat just because it needs to be cleared, right? And so when it's active, where am I feeling it in my body? Whereas when it's restful, there's relative emotional peace. You're not really triggered. You're kind of in homeostasis. Alternatively, when we focus on the feel out field, we're feeling out into the world. It's everything else, all the other physical sensations that we might be experiencing. So whether that's temperature or movement, any areas of tension or softness, anything that we would any physical sensation that we would categorize is either pleasant or unpleasant or neither one of them, but you sense that there's a physical sensation there, that isn't related to an emotional state, it would be a feeling out designation. And here too, sometimes, again, it can be very rare and it can be very short lived. We can experience restful states in our physical sensations where it just kind of like falls away for a brief period. And so the way we're going to do this practice, we're going to work with noting and labeling. And I want to kind of define what each of these are. Noting is about acknowledging what you're experiencing in the moment, right? You're noting, you just know, oh, I'm hearing something, or I'm seeing something, or I'm feeling something. And that's when we aim our sensory target, right? You're saying, oh, this is how I'm experiencing this particular stimuli. And then the other part of noting is giving it focus. And when you give it focus, you're giving your attention and awareness to that thing. And so together, right, acknowledging and focusing are what are the two components of noting. Now, when we note something, we can also work with labels. And I realize that, so the way we're going to do it, you can use labels out loud, like in your normal voice. You can use it quietly in a whisper or just to yourself or anything in between. Or you don't have to use labels at all. Labels are optional, right? Noting you need to do. That's noting is not optional, but labels are optional. And the way you would label is with see, hear, and feel. If all you're picking up in the moment is one of those three, but sometimes there's a combination. Like in the example that I gave, there's a, let's say you're reliving a memory and there's a whole conversation involved, right? There's laughter, like you went to Disneyland, whatever. You're reliving a memory, a good memory, and you can hear the dialogue that was going on. You can see the actual movie playing in your mind's eye. So that would be a see here in, right? But let's say also you start noticing, so it might be just a see here. So you label it as see here. But let's say in the next, we're going to be labeling throughout the practice period, right? But you start noticing, oh my God, it's making me happy to relive this moment. So now you're reliving it, but then there's also an emotional component. So you would label it as see, hear, feel. It would be all three, right? So you can, and then you can do any pairing combinations of them, right? So the movie was a see, hear. When you bring in the emotional state and you recognize it, you notice it, it becomes a see, hear, feel. And then maybe that feeling becomes the grossest and the most obvious thing that you're experiencing. Then you would just label that as feel. So just being able to note and label our experience in this way really allows us to touch into what is this moment made up of for us, right? And so when we think about why, even though labeling is optional, why label? They help us monitor our experience as it's happening. They help with noting, right? Because then you start building on the, or deepening under the layers of what you're noting. Um, they allow for spoken labels or mental labels or no labels at all. But if you're really trying to hone your practice and hone these skills, it's really practical to be able to label the experience as you're happening. It's consider them like training wheels that you never need to take off. So you can label forever, and it doesn't mean, one of the questions I get when I'm consulting with clients is, oh, but I'm still labeling after all this time. But I'm like, I label. I still label after 10 years of working in this way, right? With this technique. And especially sometimes, especially when I'm having a very difficult time or I'm experiencing something very challenging, it's really helpful to sit there and out loud, right? So instead of miring myself in the details of what's playing in my mind or the conversation I just had that was challenging, to as it's coming up for me, labeling it, right? Labeling the emotion just as feel. I don't have to get into the details, but I can tell there's something here. But I can label the emotion as I'm replaying it. I can label whether I'm just rehearing the conversation or I'm seeing it. And there's something that removes you as the person that it's happening to when you do it in this way, and you become very objective around it. And it turns down the intensity of what you were experiencing. And as we do this, so you would do labeling as we're going to do it. I'm going to guide you through each level and then we'll open it up at the end. But labeling is done every 3 to 5 seconds as you're going through the practice, right? And know that it's okay to miss if you mislabeled or you were like, I don't know, it just happened right there, right? Because you're labeling it could be every 3 to 5 seconds, every 10 seconds. You get to choose how often you bring in the labels of what you're experiencing. But it's okay to miss, because guess what? There's just another moment right there waiting to be labeled. And then it's okay to also guess when, especially when we're starting, you don't need to second guess. Ooh, was that a good label? I think that was a see, hear, feel, but I only caught see, right? So it's okay to just guess because again, you're going to have another opportunity just right there, right after. And it's okay to be a little bit late. So let's say you fall into like your mind wanders and then you're like, "Ooh, I lost track." You know? So it's okay to label what just happened. There's no need to like be strict about, "Oh, it has to be every 3 to 5 seconds." It's just a suggestion. And it's okay to give the average of the experience. So you might, if you're waiting for 5 seconds, it could be a very long time. And I don't want you to be counting the seconds, right? But it could be, you could have a C component that was just C, and then your mind jumps to a sound, external sound, and then it'll hear your stomach grumbling, and that's where your focus goes, and you're like, okay, I heard out, and now I'm hearing in, or I'm sorry, they're both out, right? And so um, there's a dialogue happening. It's okay if you just say, that was mostly see and hear, right? Because it's going to constantly be shifting and moving and changing. Oops, that was not good. That needed to go out. Frank. If you don't mind, Frank, we need to take out slide 13 if possible, because I think it's, yes. Mm-hmm. Sorry. I just saw that it's a duplicate slide. So just before we jump into how to, like, the more general how to practice, Frank, are there any questions about any of this, or does anyone have any concerns or thoughts about this?
Sorry, I have all these buttons now to push to unmute, to turn my camera on. And all that to say, no, not at the moment.
Okay, thank you. So, having gotten through all that, and I hope that was helpful enough, I will still be guiding you through this practice as we always do. But for this practice, you can do it in any posture. So you can be sitting, standing. You can even be in movement. Um, you could be laying down. One comment on movement is that you are bringing in another layer of challenge when you're doing it in movement. So that's the only thing to take into consideration. And we will start with our eyes open, but obviously at any point you can have your eyes open or closed. Um, Sometimes seeing in is easier to do when our eyes are closed. So I'll provide that prompt, but know that you can do this practice in eyes open, closed, or anything in between. And all you have to do is listen to my voice and the prompts I'll give. There will be moments of silence, and that is because I'm giving some time for you to process the information I just gave and then see what the mind does with it and allow you to kind of explore it. We don't want it to be this uh, prompt after prompt after prompt experience, right? We want to see, what does the mind do with this? Where does it go? Does it stay with what I'm asking it to do in this moment, or does it start flying away? Which is very common and normal to do. And that is the mindful moment, is when you bring it back, knowing that is the exercise, is that the expectation isn't that your mind stays on track the entire time, because it won't. So like, let's remove that as an expectation. um and all you have to do is notice what's happening in each field, right? Whether it's see, hear, or feel. um and as best you can, maintaining and curious, friendly, and gentle attitude toward whatever you happen to be experiencing and to the practice itself. It might feel like it's not landing for you, and that's fine. Um, but it's a very, very powerful practice. And I just hope that uh, you, this, how often do you get the opportunity to practice in this way in a community all together, the same technique, this particular technique, right? So give it a try, see if it's resonating now. And if you've tried it before, it didn't resonate, try it again. Let's see, you're a different person now. It's 2025. Let's see what happens. Um, and know that you can stop at any point. You're going to have this recording, and you can always revisit these techniques. Um, so don't feel like you have to, um, stick with the practice for the entire duration. And if you want to switch up the practice to something that feels more nourishing, I mean, this is what we plan to work with today. But if you really feel like you need another practice, know that that's okay too. You can shift the practice to something that actually suits you for this day and this moment, and that we're just here to give each other support in this way. So, with that, let's practice. So I invite you to just stretch up and settle in and take a couple of deep breaths. Let them be deep and comfortable breaths. And if it's helpful, sigh out the exhale. And the sighing actually really helps inform the mind that it's time to relax. Once you do that a couple of times, do it as many times as you need to, just letting the breath go to its natural rhythm. And we're going to start with the field of C, right? I just invite you to focus for a couple of seconds on something in the room and then release the gaze. We're just going to practice a little bit with the labels and the noting. You can drop your gaze on something else and then label it C and let go. You can even remember extend the periods, whatever feels comfortable for you on the labeling. So just for now, looking at things, injecting your awareness into it, and labeling it C. And recognizing that you're seeing out. You can also cover the visual field widely. So as you widen your visual field, you can take in the distance of things, the colors, the shapes, the densities, the textures. And here too, you can continue to be using the label of see, see out. And now, if it's comfortable, I invite you to close your eyes or maintain a very soft gaze, leave them half open, because we're going to start looking in and notice if there's anything going on in the mind as far as a visual image. Are you seeing people or things or beings? Is it active, like we shared, or is it restful? Excuse me, is it restful? So continuing with the label of C, if you are seeing something, or choosing the label of rest if there's actually nothing, all you're seeing is a blank screen. See, see. And so, as you're practicing in this way, looking inward, begin to notice if there's any internal dialogue, any clear words or whispers that you can make out, not getting caught up in the actual details of it. Begin to shift your attention to your hearing, that internal hear. Let the mental talk come and go. You may even want to track its pace and rhythm, where it's located in the head. Where do you experience the internal talk? There's all sorts of qualities to our internal dialogue. So, using the label here, if the mind goes quiet at any point, you can refer to that as rest. And now, excuse me. And now, taking your attention, moving the attention outward, begin to notice the sounds, the external sounds, my voice, the sounds in the room, excuse me, the sounds in the room, and let your attention move from sound to sound. So there may be sounds that are constant, and there may be sounds that are more intermittent. They come and go, but continuing to label them as here. And if you begin to notice any sort of silence, you can always use the label rest for as long as that silence, that noted silence, lasts. Here, Here. And now shifting gears to the field and the focus to the feel space. We'll start with just our physical sensations in our body that is feeling out. These are just the physical sensations and temperature, pressure. You might be feeling your breathing or your heartbeat without getting caught up in whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. Labeling all of these as feel when you notice them. And it might be an interesting exercise to scan from the head down on the surface of the body, on the inside of the body, and just feel what's going on in each area and label it as feel. Just keeping the attention moving and not focused on a particular area. And you might notice there are areas that maybe there's no sensation there. They feel like kind of blank or a void. And you can label that as rest. So if you do sense any sort of sensation, movement, tingling, throbbing, aching, you would label it as feel. And if there were no sensations there, you would just refer to it as rest. Feel, feel. So since we have moved through all three focus areas, inwardly and outwardly, let's begin to open up our approach because our reality moves through all of them, right? And so, continuing in this way of noting and labeling, you can start building combinations, maybe even spreading them out a little further, maybe every 5 to 10 seconds of labels, and noting what just happened in that last 5 to 10 seconds. Was it just seeing? Was it just hearing? Was it just feeling? Whether inward or outward. But was it some combination? Maybe all three. And the way you would label it in this way, you would just say see here, or see feel, or hear feel. If it's all three, you would just say see hear feel. So continuing to practice in this way. See, hear, feel. Now that you've gotten a feel for how to approach it through all the different labels, let's just open up the practice even further, and you get to decide what area you want to focus on. Do you want to focus on see in or see out, or just both, seeing in and out, or hearing in or hearing out, or both, just focusing on that area of focus of hearing, both in and out? Same thing with feel. You have a lot of options. Or you can kind of open it up completely and just know as the stimuli is coming in, how it's coming in, and just do see, hear, feel broadly. And as we do this in silence, know that you can switch it up. So whatever you choose for initially doesn't have to be what you end up with. You can experiment and go through all six of them on your own. See in and out, hear in and out, feel in and out. You can experiment with saying the labels out loud, softly, or just in your mind. Nice work. As we get ready to close out this period of practice, let's just take a moment to reflect on the fact that though we practice for ourselves and we surely get personal benefits from practicing, that there's a ripple effect in that others also benefit from our practice because it might make us a little more kind in our actions and words, a little more generous, a little more loving and compassionate. And so, yes, we are the primary beneficiaries of our practice, but we also do it in support of everyone else that comes into contact with us. And of the infinite things that you could have been doing in this time, you chose to dedicate it for this practice. So offering yourself a little bit of gratitude for prioritizing this in this moment. Just be a simple thank you. And I wanted to leave some time because it is a little um, more complex of a technique than that's often shared. So I wanted to leave some time just in case there's any need for clarification. I want to thank you all for your beautiful practice. And so we'll start shifting now. I invite you to stretch and move and yawn, shake.
And type in the chat
Yeah, if there
if
is
you have
anything.
comments, questions. So I'm looking to see. Thank you for reminding me of this practice. It feels good to be practicing again.
Nice.
Yes, meditation practice does have a ripple effect to others in our lives. Yeah, maybe one
Yeah.
of the questions I might think about adding in the future is if there's someone in particular you think might benefit from your practice on a given day. I mean, I like the idea because it's true, right? That the practice radiates out, and we mostly don't even know what kind of effect it has
Yeah.
because it's so big, and sometimes it can be nice to think of specific people that might benefit in specific ways.
True. But I'll be honest, by the end of a meditation, sometimes just ready to get off the and just sit there and spend any more time to think about someone
Right.
specific. Like, I know everybody is going to benefit, but yeah,
That's true. Closing it up is often it's like I'm just done now, and I just want to bask in this feeling, especially
no,
if I
it's
feel settled after a practice, because so
yeah,
much in life, busy feeling unsettled.
yeah. But yeah, yeah. Thank you for practicing in this way. This was like a really um, turning point practice for me. It gave me. It has so much structure that it allowed me to, and then all of a sudden, I realized, experientially, like the teacher would tell us. The teacher's name is Shinzen Young. So if you want to check out more of his work, please do at Shinzen Young. I think it's shinzenyoung.com. But when I came across his work, I was like, this is all there is. Like all these different, this is it. This is all there is. It's either active or restful, and it's in these three, and it's either happening inside or outside. And I was like, ooh.
And I
So
really
there's,
like that it's a way of like, I think about, like, sometimes with open awareness practice, um, the task is, keep an eye not keep an eye, notice where your attention is, the location. And sometimes, like, we don't even know how to do that. What I really like about this practice is it starts to orient us toward, "Oh, this is where my attention is. It's on that,
mhm.
thing I'm seeing or the thing I'm hearing, and it's outside, it's inside."
I also want to say that we're just scratching the surface of this approach because so you're the observer here, but then as you get more advanced, you actually move, you can shift the awareness and watch the watcher basically.
How do you label that? Watch Frank now. Watch
Yeah.
Frank
It's more
watching.
of a, it's more of a like a perceptual shift, and then you're still doing the see, hear, feel work, but it's a really, it goes very deep, and it can very quickly start to uh, help you navigate what's happening. And then there's also other, there's flow states and positive emotional states that we can work with, which I will present them over the course of the year at different intervals. But um, it has a lot of different components.
Here is a comment I was able to really explore here more today as it's abnormally quiet in my environment today. I enjoyed it.
Beautiful. It's wonderful.
I
One
love
of the
things that
things
are
I would
abnormal and the quiet. Sorry, go ahead.
no, one of the things I would notice when I go on retreats where you're doing like intensive practice, 10, 12 hours a day, um, is that my sense of smell would open up. So usually in my day to day, it's not as strong, but I would be doing all this practice, and all of a sudden, oof, sense of smell would open up. And in this practice, um, I'm gonna like the fact that taste and scent are all falling under feel. You want it to be nice. You wouldn't want to create another see, hear, feel, taste, smell.
Left foot, right foot.
But just the fact that I would open up my sense of smell, that's what happens. You start opening up in ways that you didn't realize were even closed.
I like the experience of things being more vivid.
Mhm.
Vivid in a pleasant way.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to need to
Oh,
stop for
okay.
today. Do you have
Next week,
what are we doing next week?
you're doing gratitude.
Oh, well then, I am prepared to do gratitude next week. I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Yeah. So
Thank
this
you
week we talked
all.
about, oh,
Oh,
sorry,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
just to connect the two. So this we are kind of taking stock, and next we're going to be giving thanks for what's here. And so we're just going to build it to this new year, new me.
And we are very happy to be back. And allegedly, so this month, among the things I did while we weren't doing the class was learning a new workflow for doing our videos. So today is the first video. We'll see how fast this workflow helps me get it done. So, again, always check out the videos on the YouTube channel and come back next week. We'll do more. Thank you all. Thank you for being here.
Thanks all.